Chat's popping YouTube. I'm actually back with another book review. I've been feeling, a little under the weather, but so I might sound like I have a bit of a cold still, but anyway, today we have the absolutely harrowing anti-war masterpiece of American fiction, Dalton Trumbo's Johnny Got His Gun, or the book that Metallica based one on. Probably how you'd know this. So this book was an incredibly difficult read. I'm talking probably the toughest book I've ever read. It's not tough because of the language or the prose, which is basically the same thing, or the length or anything like that. It's just that the subject matter is so intense. But we'll get there later. I wasn't really sure how to approach this one. Usually my summaries are full of jokes and memes and very casual, but that feels kind of inappropriate for this book, but we'll see what happens. Let's get into it. So, this book opens on Joe Bonham. He is your average American lad from World War I, except for the fact that he and his mates just got shelled to shit by a mortar blast. So most of the boys died in a blaze of glory, but not Joe. Joe wakes up in a hospital somewhere, but he can't see, speak, hear, or smell anything. His face is all wrapped up in bandages, and the doctors are busy amputating his legs and arms. Oh. So Joe begins to realise that he and his mates were hit by a mortar, and that nothing of him is left except for a torso and a featureless head. He has no face, no ears, no limbs. He is quite literally imprisoned inside his body, with no way to communicate with the outside world. He is being fed through a tube, and occasionally he is washed by the nurse, but other than that, he is just a vegetable, with a still working brain. Holy hell, I wouldn't wish this upon my worst enemy. Anyway, the first portion of the book is basically Joe coming to terms with his current situation, while escaping into imaginary visions of important events from his previous life. He remembers how he got into the situation, and then he realises that he can communicate with the doctors outside by using Morse code. So he begins to bash his head against the pillow, spelling out the words SOS, help me. Eventually one of the nurses realises something is up and goes and gets one of the army lads who identifies it as Morse code. He then asks Joe what he wants by tapping him on the forehead in Morse code, and Joe explains that he really wants to get out of the hospital and basically become a freak show to show the Joe public the reality and the horrors of war, selling himself like some kind of circus sideshow. However, he is told that this is against army regulations, and then the army just leave him entombed inside himself for the rest of his life. So, very bleak. I mean, this book is horrifying. It is the most horrifying and hauntingly beautiful book I've ever read. Reading this reminded me of what real literature is, but it did so much more than that. I mean, this book truly, deeply disturbed me in a way that no horror book ever has, or probably ever will. I mean, I glazed over quite a lot of stuff that happens. The book is a lot longer than that, but that is the basic plot. Despite the briefness, there is a lot to unpack with this one. So, first and foremost, this book is a pretty basic anti-war thesis piece, which makes a ton of sense in context. I mean, Joe's an American, the war is World War I, he was conscripted, he has no business being in this war, the war didn't affect America in the slightest, but here he is fighting for the British and the French against the Germans, and he loses everything. Well, not quite. I mean, he gets stuck as a dead man who is still conscious, though. I mean, the book is the perfect answer to any war. It was published in 1939, so before the Yanks even joined World War II, but this could easily be updated for Vietnam or Iraq or basically any war America's ever been in except for World War II. But, I mean, in fact, there's actually this really powerful foreword written by the father of a soldier who died in Iraq that was included in the edition. That was included in the edition that I have, so anyway. The basic theme and message of the book is that to normal men, war is a net negative no matter what. They don't care about the Germans, they don't care about liberty or democracy or whatever they're selling, whatever the war industry is selling the war to you for, Not really. I mean, Joe loses his liberty and he loses his ability to participate in democracy. So do all the dead men. Most of them would have preferred to never enter the war in the first place. Most of them would rather live under German rule even. To him, he just wants to live his life in peace. He doesn't care about what big-shot politicians and generals want, and he didn't even sign up for war. It's not like he was a career soldier. He was drafted. His entire life was stolen from him by a war that his people didn't even need to fight in. And I mean, Joe is a horrifying character. When I was reading it, I realised that Joe could be me. If tomorrow Canada went to war with Russia and I got drafted and blown to hell in Ukraine or something, it could be me lying in that, living hell. It could be one of my friends or one of my brothers. It could be any man. It's terrifying. I mean, here's a punishment not even fit for the worst criminals, and it has been put upon a completely innocent guy. Was Joe a perfect person? No. Who is? But he was just a normal dude. A normal dude who was living a normal life. He just wanted to live his life, fall in love, work in the factory, whatever. But, for me, the most interesting idea this book explores, and it doesn't really explore that much, but it's the ethics of actually saving someone in that situation. I would rather die than end up like Joe. I think everyone would. Going slowly mad in a hospital bed for 60 years or so is worse than hell. At least, in hell, you deserved it. Should the doctors have even saved him in the first place? Should they have just let him die? I think so, but this question is not really brought up that much in the book, and the book doesn't even bring up euthanasia as a topic, although apparently the movie version does, so... But, in modern day, we've brought the euthanasia discussion up a lot recently, especially in my country of Canada. There was a lot of stuff about that in the news not too long ago, and the sort of ethics of euthanasia. I mean, I think it's a real discussion, and this book kind of opens a dialogue there as well, although it doesn't really actually explore that either. Anyway, food for thought. Overall, 5 out of 5, absolutely haunting. I mean, this is real literature. I was in Chapters the other day looking at, just books, and I saw all sorts of shit, like, there was one book that was like, oh, it's, lesbian necromancers in space and popcorn, shit like that. And, I mean, this book reminded me that real literature exists. It's horrifying. It took me over a month to read, not because it was long or anything, it's like 200 pages, but because it was just such heavy subject matter, I couldn't consume it in large quantities. It was, I don't even think I'd recommend this to anyone. I mean, it's amazing, one of the best books I've ever read, but I can't in good conscience actually recommend this to anyone unless you have a very strong stomach and can deal with very disturbing subject matter. Truly one of the greatest English language novels I've ever read, or any work I've ever read, really. It's amazing. And if you want to read a definitely not one of the greatest English language works ever written, you can check out my novella, The Seraph of Kitsch. It's up on my website, and a physical release will be a thing at some point, I think. Part 5 went live last week, and the final part, the epilogue, should be up by this Friday. I'm not sure when this video is actually going to get posted, but you should check it out and let me know what you think. And tune in next time to see what I think of Brandon Sanderson, because I'm reading one of his books right now, and we'll see. Bye.